The various incarnations of Victor Hugo's pieuvre. This quote from The Toilers of the Sea is, of course, well known in Guernsey. This monster is the one sailors call the octopus, which science calls the cephalopod, and that legend calls the kraken. British seamen call it the devilfish. They also call it the bloodsucker. In the Channel Islands, they give it the name pieuvre. I'm not here to explain to the worthy representatives of the noble little people of the sea with me today all about the history of the word pieuvre. My comments are intended for those whom we call in Normandy Orsins, people who are not local to the region. According to the language experts from Guernsey and Jersey, the novelist has perhaps used a sort of metathesis, mixing the words pieuvre and pivre, which are used by the fishermen of Guernsey, or he borrowed the name pieuvre to refer to the octopus from the fishermen of the Bay of St. Juan in Jersey. Of course, as there are no linguistic boundaries in the open waves, he may equally well have heard the word pieuvre spoken here in Guernsey. On the other hand, we do know one thing, that the first occurrence of the word pieuvre from the hand of Victor Hugo is to be found on the first page of his notebook, in which he records his time on the island of Sark in May and June 1859. And it's up here. Une pieuvre, devilfish. These are his actual manuscript notes on his notebook. There's still a further surprise left for the reader at the end of the notebook. On page 154, we find the notes that Victor Hugo had without doubt written upon seeing a dead octopus on some Sark shore. Hydra, bloodshot eyes, 8 legs, innumerable suckers on the underside of each leg, like white pustules, a huge goiter upon its head, skin full of pustules and viscous, no mouth, the suckers feed it. When on its back it makes a star between the legs, membranous fins, and an additional note written across the page, the suckers come out in combat. During his visit to the island, Hugo must have witnessed the scene he would later include in the novel. Go to Sark, and they will show you near Brecu, the crevice in a rock. And I'll just try and find the spot. Somewhere in the middle here. Allez à Cerc, there. Follow on from there. This detail from the novelist himself. He watched while his son Charles, swimming one day near the island of Sark, was chased by an octopus of the same size as he describes. Now, not only did Hugo describe the pieuvre in minute detail, see the chapter entitled The Monster, in which the creature appears, I quote, as a masterpiece of horror, but he drew it too. Now, this is the best known of his depictions of the pieuvre, created around 1866 in brown ink, pen and wash, and placed in the manuscript of Toilers of the Sea a month and a half after its publication. It could easily be an illustration for the same chapter. Suddenly it opens up. 8 radials splay out abruptly from a face with 2 eyes. It's a kind of wheel unfurled, 4 or 5 feet in diameter, the blossoming of a terrifying flower. This is what launches itself at you. You would, of course, have noticed the tentacles at the top of the drawing formed the novelist's initials. VH. The second drawing, from 1866 to 1868, calls to mind this quotation from the Monster chapter. The pieuvre is yellowish below, mud-colored above. The tints of dust are subtle and indescribable. It seems like a beast made of ash that lives in the sea. Now, this dates without doubt from the end of the period of exile. In pens appear a drawing that depicts a dead pieuvre, and in addition, two of the poet's descendants would go on to draw pieuvres themselves. Jean Hugo, his great-grandson, and Marie, Jean's daughter, in as recently as 2022. Now, the novel was published on the 12th of May, 1866, in Paris and Brussels simultaneously. And in the days following, the newspapers were, according to François Victor in a letter to his father, unanimous in their praise. Your success is immense, universal. I've never seen such unanimity. The triumph of Les Misérables has been surpassed. On the 15th of March, Paul Maurice too gave the exile the news. Continued success. Today we'll probably reach the respectable total of 4,000 copies sold and in 3 days, that's neat. The next day, Hugo reported to his wife. Auguste writes to me and says, wonderful success. Verboekhoven writes, magnificent success. And in another letter to his wife, Hugo states, I'm receiving newspapers from all over and they are keen. For her part, in Guernsey, Juliette Drouet confided in her epistolary journal for the day, I'm going to make the most of my morning by reading more of the articles praising my beloved toilers. The word pieuvre and Gilliatt's fight against the monster with 250 suckers certainly played a part in the novel's success. The press coverage demonstrates this throughout. And a few extracts will confirm it. L'Événement, a newspaper with a popular readership, dedicates several articles to the pieuvre, which it calls a beast of a success and today's great sensation. On the 25th of March, the journalist Jules Richard exclaimed, the pieuvre, the pieuvre. Since the publication of the Toilers of the Sea, the whole of Paris, the whole of France, the whole of Europe, the whole universe has been wondering if the pieuvre actually exists. On the 6th of April, in the newspaper Le Pays, Monsieur Voiseau enumerated those animals that had their 15 minutes of fame in the circuses of Paris. Now, no one wants anything but the monster from the Toilers of the Sea, he wrote. This terrifying pieuvre that the day before yesterday, one gracious journalist colleague called that huge crab. So here we are. Paris is only interested in this monster, unknown yesterday, and suddenly a sensation. On the 11th of April in Le Soleil, we read, many of our subscribers who've not yet read the novel are, however, already familiar with the magnificent account of the fight of the hero against the pieuvre, which is quoted everywhere in the press. On the 24th of April, the readers learnt that the success of the pieuvre had assumed colossal proportions. 2 days later, the tone was jocular. Quotes, a friend of Monsieur Gaboreau, who's a statistician by business and by vocation, has calculated that since the publication of the Toilers of the Sea and up to the 22nd of April this year, 304,114 lines have been written about the pieuvre. Now, in his great universal dictionary of the 19th century, published in 1874, Pierre Larousse reminded us that Victor Hugo was the progenitor of the pieuvre. The pieuvre is the octopus as seen by Victor Hugo, exaggerated by his imagination and described with that power which the master applies equally to fantasy and to reality. The octopus belongs to the naturalists. The pieuvre is a creation of Victor Hugo, and one of his most striking. He introduced it to the world in Toilers of the Sea. Pieuvre, as he presented it there, caused a sensation. People talked of nothing but pieuvre in the year of our Lord, 1866. This tentacular expansion of the pieuvre throughout the press did not go unnoticed by those cartoonists who drew their inspiration from contemporary events. Several of them produced caricatures of the pieuvre and of Gilliatt. One such was André Gilles in the April edition of La Lune. More often, the novelist himself is featured in association with the pieuvre. He is represented thus by Morland in December 1866 in Le Journal Amusant. He's shown in the process of writing, sitting on the edge of the open mouth of a gigantic pieuvre. Gilliatt, dressed as a sailor, his arms wide open, is kneeling on the creature's head, while Déruchette looks towards the horizon, standing on a tentacle. In the background, a plume of smoke rises from the funnel of the Durande. The Toilers of the Sea also inspired Cham in the Almanac of Charivari for 1867, and in a vignette, he shows the author of Les Misérables greeting Jean Valjean, who, the caption reads, thanks him for not having made him fight a pieuvre. In La Ville Parisienne, 5 January, Marcellin presents 2 illustrations. In one, we see the great Hugo, Thugo, with tentacles for a body, as the author of the pieuvre in one act, together with Couplet, gazing at a copy of Littré's dictionary. In the other, he gives us Victor Hugo as a showman, standing on the rostrum of a fairground theatre, pointing with his stick to a pieuvre drawn upon a backdrop. The caption written by Marcellin refers to contemporary events, because a few months earlier, a new submarine cable had reduced the time a message from Europe took to get to the United States to just a few minutes. Quotes, the Toilers of the Sea, a pieuvre gains a transatlantic reputation by intercepting a submarine telegram. A talking plate, signed H. Noyon, also takes inspiration from this submarine cable, illustrating a review of the year 1866, the year of publication of Toilers of the Sea. The book is referred to below the image. Now, the caption reads, Monsieur Victor Hugo, getting bored in Jersey, fishes for pieuvre to kill time. He's actually sitting on a Guernsey rock. You'd need a powerful magnifying glass to spot a dig from the artist. Well hidden amongst the floral motifs can be made out of several bags, on which is written 1,000, as well as 2 labels, one good for 1,500, another one good for 1,500, and the other 50 francs, of course. These probably allude to the amount offered to Hugo by Millot, the founder of Le Soleil, to allow publication of the novel as a serial in his newspaper. Bublon's cartoon in Le Front Parleur Belge of 12 December 1869, a few months after the publication of L'Homme qui rit, is even more obvious in its import. With a huge forehead, his hands upon a pot belly, Victor Hugo sits aside a pieuvre in the form of a bag of money, and whose tentacles clasp coins. The pieuvre is processing down a carpet made of 20-franc Napoleon gold pieces, and on its body can be seen the inscription, 200,000 francs to be distributed amongst comrades and friends. The caricature, which like the novel is called The Man Who Laughs, refers to the contract that Hugo had made for this novel with his publisher Lacroix. 100,000 francs when the contract was signed and 100,000 francs upon publication. Now, more surprising perhaps is Henri Fusino's caricature entitled Miracles of the Day, which appeared in Le Tocsin of 1st September 1867, a few days after the supposed cures effected by Auguste Henri Jacob, known as the Zouave Jacob. He was a spiritualist healer. Amongst a crowd of sufferers who are rushing to meet him, we find Hugo, a pieuvre under his arm, his hair blowing in the wind. We already know what the diagnosis will be. Like the woman on the left, he's going to be given a ticket for Nanterre, the home of the Zouave Jacob, to be cured, rather like lured. We then come to this well-known caricature by Delayotti, published in Le Annotant on the 6th of June, 1867, surely the most accomplished of all those that evoke Gilliatt's fight. On a rocky islet beside his lyre, Hugo, looking determined, his head encircled by a laurel wreath, holding his pen and carrying a globe, tramples the pieuvre, who lives in the grotto next to the wreck of the Durande. The arrows of lightning which are emitted from the novelist's head might suggest that for Delayotti, the struggle of Gilliatt / Hugo recalls that of Apollo overcoming the python that guarded the oracle at Delphi, his weapon an arrow. In 1872, Loredan Larcher's historical, etymological, and anecdotal dictionary of Parisian argot contained a new definition: a loose woman sapping the body or the wallet of a lover. Allusion to the pieuvre, which plays such an absorbing role in the toilers of the sea, end of quote. 2 weeks after the novel's publication, La Presse tells us a new expression is to be added to the Parisian vocabulary. Cocotte is banal. Biche is old hat. One now says a pieuvre. It may not be the prettiest, but it's more vigorous and is new. This dreadful word, pieuvre, is, as we all know, taken from Toilers of the Sea. End of quotation. Now, it would be wrong to think that only Parisian newspapers carried this new definition of the word pieuvre. We also find it in the provincial press. Thus, in Le Courrier de Saône-et-Loire of the 29th of March, Félix Sordet wrote, "Let me tell you, the women of the underclass are no longer referred to as cocotte, but instead as pieuvre, the name of a hideous and repulsive fish, written about by Victor Hugo in The Toilers of the Sea." Now, 17 years after the publication of Hugo's novel in 1883, Alfred Delvau's Dictionary of Argot would confirm the word pieuvre had not only been accepted into the canon, but was still current. A tart, a kept woman, in the slang of the literati, who've used the term since the publication of Toilers of the Sea, in which Hugo describes so masterfully Gilliatt's fight against a monstrous octopus. Now, I'm so surprised that the caricaturists embraced this new meaning for the term and made every possible use of it. So Morland in Le Charivari of the 31st of March, 1866, gives us a full-page illustration entitled "The Stages of a Pieuvre." The hair of one of them, stretching out in tentacle ringlets, winds tightly around 4 men. And she's wearing a long dress festooned with tentacles, her train held by a handmaiden who bears a curious resemblance to none other than Victor Hugo. Now, to illustrate the term loans, emprunt, Adol, in Le Charivari of December 1868, draws us a cocotte holding a little coffer. Her tentacle flounces also keep tight hold of 4 gentlemen who throw coins at her, thus illustrating the short caption, "All the pieuvre's suckers." Toutes les venteuses de la pieuvre. Even when the term is not synonymous with the gold digger, the pieuvre can be dangerous. Charivari, in April 1866, demonstrates this with this cartoon from Cham, which portrays women in bathing costumes, standing in the water or on the sand, armed with swords. The caption reads, "These ladies find the famous chapter about la pieuvre rather worrying." Cham, once more, in the Journal Amusant of December 1866, gives us a pieuvre, this time an enormous one, which he shows us coming out of the water to chase a lady bather. The caption once again refers to Toilers of the Sea. Quotes, "The pieuvre attempting to live up to the reputation Monsieur Victor Hugo has given them." Now in town, to judge from certain drawings by Cham, the pieuvre was all the rage, especially amongst the wealthy elite. It was, so he would have us believe, quite the done thing for a woman to take around on a lead, not a toy dog, but a pieuvre. It was also the height of fashion, apparently, to have a pieuvre at a soirée. Madame X requests the pleasure of the company of Monsieur and Madame Y at a dinner party. P.S. There will be a pieuvre. According to the press, not only did the word pieuvre remain current, but it went on to become embedded, thanks to the world of fashion, in clothing and hairstyles. In an article which appeared in the Hairdresser's Journal in 1866, entitled Hello Pieuvre, we are told that, quote, our leading salons are due to launch dresses designed à la pieuvre. This will be the last word in quirky fashion. Here we are. In La Vie Parisienne in 1866, Adol presented the toilette of the pieuvre, also known as la travailleuse de la mer, the working girl of the sea. Now, if you want to dance the polka, advised La Vie Parisienne of February 1857, nothing better than toilette pieuvre, sea green, black headbands, seaweed in your hair. More than 30 years after the publication of Toilers of the Sea, the monster that Victor Hugo called a rag, a tatter, was still be giving its name to stylish outfits. Thus, in the review L'Art et le Mode of February 1898, de Sola could still give us a pretty drawing of Mademoiselle Detail wearing, according to the caption, a robe of black tulle spangled and embroidered with black velvet brocade in the form of a pieuvre. Now, could hairstyles have been inspired by the pieuvre because its name is sometimes referred to as a bonnet or bonnet? Well, in the weeks following the publication, we find innumerable hats influenced by the creature. From a selection of 67 new hat styles, La Vie Parisienne of 1866 chose the one inspired by Toilers of the Sea. Quotes, a pieuvre, naturally, but the small type, tiny in fact, a fabric like sticking plaster with a little fishing net with fish in it. And to crown it all, a fishing line complete with hook. Little lobsters holding claws for the strings. Rather cute. End of quote. Bertel gives the readers of Journal Amusant of May 1866 a drawing representing a hat à la pieuvre created by Madame Mélanie Brun and intended for young persons who wished to win the heart of a rich individual or those who aspire to attract rich and serious gentlemen. The Journal de Coiffeur of the 1st of December 1866 notes concerning hair waved and crimped in kiss curls, quotes, this style, in which hundreds of sprays of lily of the valley are scattered around the head, has been baptized hair à la pieuvre. If we're to believe the newspaper Le Masque of June 1867, the pieuvre hat was one of the most sought after. In a letter addressed to his father in spring 1866, François Victor stated, the fashion designers have already come up with a hat in the shape of a pieuvre, which is to be worn by the travailleuses de la mer, in other words, by the good time girls who will come up to Dieppe or Trouville this year. It's difficult to comprehend the fame and the coverage given to the pieuvre in those years, 1866 to 7. On 21st May 1866, Hugo notes in his notebook that the newspapers have announced that the pieuvre is now on display live in a Paris aquarium, which can be seen in the Maison Diomède in the Champs-Élysées. In fact, amongst other newspapers, Le Pays announced in its edition of the 9th of May, quote, the pieuvre, which everyone is talking about, of course, can be seen alive in the pools of the Palais Pompéan in the Champs-Élysées. The reception from the public was so favorable that in a few weeks, the number of pools and aquariums in Paris displaying pieuvre had multiplied. The Museum of the Jardin des Plantes displayed, according to the Journal Amusant of September 1866, that gigantic pieuvre, compared to which Gilliatt's octopus is but a sardine. Once more, the name of Hugo is associated with the pieuvre. In October 1866, Le Siècle stated, since Victor Hugo's last novel appeared, no self-respecting aquarium can afford not to have a pieuvre. In November 1866, the Constitutionnel tells us that in another aquarium in the Boulevard Montmartre was boasting of, quote, a pieuvre, the horrible creature, it suckers alive, it slackens and coagulates there as it likes. The first journal of the Journal Amusant of 1867 published 5 drawings from Robida called Aquaria. And if we're to believe the first caption, the most attractive present one can give a lady for her birthday is without contradiction an aquarium for her drawing room, but it must have with it 1 or 2 drawing room pieuvres. Delivered. She's delighted. The second gives us a short dialogue between the lady of the house and her maid. Quote, Madame, I left the little one near the aquarium. Tell me, you're making me anxious. All right then. The pieuvre ate him. We're nowhere near the end of the path taken by the pieuvre once it had left the Roche d'Ouvre. After loose women, fashion, and aquariums, we find it under the heading gastronomy. An article in Le Pays of April 1866 prophesied, quotes, the pieuvre is definitely in fashion and in a fortnight we'll be eating it in all our restaurants. And indeed, in less than a fortnight, L'Événement invited 80 journalists to the Grand Hotel for a dinner in which was served pieuvre with mushrooms. 2 cartoons play on this dinner. One by Carlo Grip appeared in La Lune in April. Quotes, here's Mirez, a leading banker and businessman, in raptures over the pieuvre à la financière. The other, by Alfred Darjoux, published on the same date in La Presse Illustrée, is captioned, Success of the Day. At the 32-sous dinner, 1 pieuvre between 2. On the 22nd of May, a grand dinner took place in Paris at the Maison Diomède with 107 guests, amongst whom were Arsène Housset and Nadar, sitting around the aquarium in which the pieuvre were gliding about. The newspaper La Célébrité reported that a fish for the occasion, pieuvre with anchovies, was a very successful novelty. It was, according to the article, a veritable gourmet dish. And Alexandre Dumas will no doubt give a recipe for it to all the maîtres d'hôtes of the great houses. This was referring, of course, to Dumas père. But it was a caricature of Dumas fils that Cham was to produce a few months later, quote, the pieuvre, who is furious with Monsieur Alexandre Dumas because he's managed to write an interesting novel without mentioning it. La Presse Illustrée of May 1866 stated, in the world of gastronomy, the pieuvre is the dish of the moment. There's no well-serviced table on which it does not appear. The world of music also embraced the pieuvre. And its first fanciful association with music was made by Louis Leroy, who in the Charivari of April 1866 devised a little story which featured Liszt and his faithful manservant Fritz. Liszt, who he calls the Holy Father pianist, is lacking inspiration when suddenly he dives on his piano. I have it, Fritz, the Pieuvre Symphony. Can you hear those twining scales. Those are the tentacles of the monster. They're lined at intervals with suckers. Look, the action of the creature's suckers is puffing up the piano keys. The epilogue takes a macabre turn. A short time later, we see two legs twitching feebly below the wrecked keyboard and the remainder of Liszt's body having been crushed by the instrument. Well, the pieuvre would continue its long journey into French society through song. Several newspapers report musical soirées, during the course of which various songs with titles "The Pieuvre" were performed. The newspaper Liberté, in several editions in May and June 1866, reports on elegant, fashionable soirées given by the Princesse de Fortin, at which much was made of the pieuvre. On the 22nd of May, quotes, people particularly applauded a witty, unpublished song entitled The Pieuvre, dedicated to the poet of Toilers of the Sea. Other musicians were inspired, such as Ernest Thévenet with his piano waltz entitled The Pieuvre, which was played at Café Concert in 1866, or again, Edmond Montbray with his pieuvre. Maximilien Graziani's brilliant quadrille for piano, dedicated to Victor Hugo and called Toilers of the Sea, met with genuine success in 1866, probably because of its fourth and last part, the pieuvre. The following year, at the Lyric Theatre of Brussels, an operetta in 2 acts by Marc Le Prévost, called Les Travailleuses de la Mer et Les Travailleuses de l'Amour, was performed. Madame Antonine played the part of the pieuvre, and she was giving the closing speech before the finale. Literature did not escape pieuvre mania either, albeit to a lesser extent. For the years 1866 to 67 alone, we find several publications in different genres which feature the word pieuvre in their title, such as Queen of the Pieuvre, or The Parisian Pieuvre, or finally, The Ananke of the Great Hugo by Gébet, and Oh la la, followed by The Pieuvre from Marseille by the Vicomte de Taillefer, and finally, A Letter from a Dandy to a Pieuvre, whose author is unknown. And in his novel, The Pieuvre of Paris, which appeared in 1878, the action of which begins in 1866, year of the publication of Toilers of the Sea, Pierre Zaccone was also to express his debt to the novelist from Guernsey. Quotes, the book from which we borrow the several lines we've just quoted was justifiably very successful, and it made the pieuvre fashionable at the very moment I found myself at the seaside. This sentence by Jules Verne from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea reflects that time very accurately. Quotes, in every major town and city, the monster became fashionable. They sang about it in the cafe. They mocked it in the papers. They gave it a role in the theatres. This last was actually quite true, for the pieuvre began to appear in many Parisian theatres. Cham's drawing in Le Charivari of 1866 was prophetic. Quotes, managers place pieuvre at the entrance, the idea being they will attract an audience with their suckers. Indeed, the pieuvre was to become the star of the theatrical reviews of that year, which were often satirical. Thus, in January 1867, at the Théâtre des Bouffes du Nord, an actress pieuvre, who appeared on stage in a strange green costume, attracted an ovation from the audience. Particularly notable was the praise from several newspapers for the pieuvre from the review called The Limping Devil, Le Diable Boiteux, performed at the Théâtre du Châtelet. This will give you an idea. Appearance of an idealized pieuvre in a splendid costume, which turned out to be one of the successes of the night. Le Figaro said, the best critique of the review lies entirely in the success that greeted the pieuvre. Only the pieuvre received bouquet. It's she alone that people applauded and the people remembered. Now, the illustrated press had a wonderful time with the annual Salon d'Art, once again giving Pieuvre pride of place. A month after the publication, a drawing by Cham appeared in the Charivari of 15 April. Quotes, Monsieur Victor Hugo's novel, the caption said, exercising a regrettable influence in the Salon of 1866. It had reappeared in the same newspaper on the 29th of April with this sketch, New Portraits à la Mode, also called à la Pieuvre. While also taking their inspiration from the Salon, other cartoonists preferred to write parodies of the paintings for their readers. Thus, Gédéon, in Le Anneton of 20 May, applied himself to Courbet's Woman with a Parrot, which became Pieuvre getting ready to suffocate a green parrot. Now that's slang for imbibing a glass of absinthe. Our sculptors, on the other hand, did not take the Pieuvre as a source of inspiration, with the exception of a waxwork whose creator is unknown and there's no image of it. But it was displayed at the Musée Français in May 1866, and quotes, the representation of the fight of the gigantic Pieuvre attracts more people to the show every day. Another report in Le Pays said, a new sculpture group has been added to the display, the fight between Gilliatt and the Pieuvre. Paul Stapfer, a frequent visitor to Hauteville House, went to see it, and he leaves us this eyewitness description in his recollections of Victor Hugo in Guernsey. Quotes, I turned Victor Hugo on to the subject of Pieuvre by telling him that I'd seen in a Paris museum a depiction in wax of the fight of Gilliatt with the Pieuvre. The monster seemed to me to be disproportionately large, and I'd expressed my astonishment to the artist himself, who replied, I myself have never seen one of that caliber. It was only later that the Pieuvre would come to inspire sculptors. First came Émile Carlier, who created the plaster model in 1879 and a bronze the following year, entitled Gilliatt and the Pieuvre. Here we are. Which was parried in Le Charivari in May 1880. It's their original parody. And in 1886, Émile Gaucher completed a bronze, Gilliatt or the Pieuvre Fisherman. If we had more time, I could describe to you the bas-relief of Barria's monument to Victor Hugo, kept at Veules-les-Roses, in which Gilliatt appears with the Pieuvre in the top right-hand corner. Sorry, wrong one. There. You can recognize many of the other characters. We will have completed our voyage around the different incarnations of the Pieuvre, or almost, once we've examined the semantic spread of this word. It became first a synonym for loose women, and then very rapidly came to describe anyone who had tentacular or pervasive aims. Once again, the press that denounced Pieuvre politics, or a monastic Pieuvre, or an ecclesiastical Pieuvre, or the Pieuvre of business, or the Pieuvre of speculation, was to inspire the caricaturists. So Cham created two drawings for Le Charivari about Prussia. Le Charivari urges Prussia to organize squadrons called on to clear out the ranks of the enemy. And as for the Pieuvre, they will eat it just as they did the elephant. And that's an allusion to the two elephants that were eaten during the Prussian siege of Paris in 1870-71. In the same number of Le Charivari, Cham published this legislative body with Pieuvre-like tendencies. The various parties in the assembly, you read them. And Paf said, this Gilliatt's new fight. Well, it's time for Victor Hugo's pieuvre to return to Guernsey and its hole in a rock. Now, very different versions of her, interesting, her, await you, as you know. There are placemats. Sorry. Placemats. Stamps. And some of you have seen the giant tentacles dominating Mansell Street outside the private gallery. And Mark Cook's statue. And even on a programme for this Victor Hugo weekend. Thank you. Thank you, Gérard.
Thank Ken for a magnificent presentation of that. I hate to say it, but we probably understood it more than Gérard had been there. But well done, Gérard, and also well done, Dinah Bott, who did the translation. So thank you all.